Okay, w1 ml320, and today's fun is going to be front lower ball joints. And they come with a special castellated nut they're held on with. This is the nut that came with the replacement ball joints. The replacements have been in the freezer for 24 hours to make them easier to install. As you can see, it's got thread locker installed from the factory. I don't have that pointed tool, a 4-tooth tool, to put them back on. I'm not worried about taking them off. I'm going to cut the old rings off or chisel them off. Just cutting them with a grinder is easy because you're going to be throwing them away. No point making a tool to take them off and wasting your time on that. Just cut them off if they're easy enough. And for reinstalling them, I'm going to be using a, what is it? It's about a cheap ass, was it a 1 3/4 inch socket that I am going to cut the removal tool from. I'm going to mark that and cut those with a grinder. This was like a $12 socket, and I will now have one forever to take off ML ball joints. So for $12, you can get the original tool. I think it's like $60 online, but I don't have 2 weeks to wait for it to come in. So I can make my own, and if that all else fails with this, if this doesn't put it onto the proper torque, which is I think around 200 foot-pounds, I'm just going to have to hammer and chisel it. But anyway, I'm going to try to do this on the car without removing the entire hub and spindle and everything. I'm going to try and do it on the car, see if it can happen. If not, we'll have to take the whole spindle off. But I'm hoping I can do this in about 45 minutes per side. Wish me luck. Back in a second once everything's all set up. Obviously, wheel off, blah blah blah. Back in a minute. Just so you can see how not fun this is going to be. It's 32 degrees Celsius in the shade, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning, which is 32 translates to about 95 Fahrenheit. So any amount of sun hitting, it's going to be like 100 degrees here today, plus humidity, so probably about 115. Lovely. So yeah, this is gonna sucky weather for it, but gotta do the ball joint, and I will be back. Holy Christ, it is hot. I may need a few of these. Anyway, wheel off, turned in the direction of the side I'm working on, so turned all the way to the left because I'm working on the left side. And underneath here, you're going to see the ball joint right here. There's the castellated nut that holds it on. And like I said, we're just going to cut this nut. We're not going to bother trying to unbolt a 15-year-old 250-pound foot of torque bolt that's on there. But first thing we're going to do is loosen the top bolt, and I think that is a 22 millimeter because we want that out of there before in case it spins once I get the bottom one off. The bottom one's going to be cut off, so that nut's going to be no problem, but we want the top one off first. So I'm going to hose it down with a little bit of penetrant, and then take off the top nut with a 22 millimeter. I think I'm going to have to use an open end wrench, or a closed end wrench. I'll be able to get a socket on that. So we'll be back in a sec. Okay, two quick things. That's a 21 millimeter bolt on top of the, nut on top of the ball joint, and I had to jack up. Sorry, I'm breathing hard. It's like I can hardly catch my breath out here. It's so freaking hot. It's like breathing steam. Anyway, had to jack it up in order to get the angle of the ball joint, so get the wrench on the back, because that kind of tilts as the suspension comes down. It tilts and tilts the bolt inwards, and you can't get a wrench in there. So I had to straighten the wheel and jack up from the bottom in order to get that top nut. So anyway, I'm just loosening that top one now, like I said, 21 millimeter, and I'll have that out in a minute. Okay, so top bolt is loose. You have to stop using a closed end wrench when you get up near the top because you can't slip it out, and using the open end part. And then once I got it all the way off, I just put it back on a few threads because I want it to hold there while I try to break the tension on the ball joint. The pinch bolt there, the taper. Actually, I am going to turn the wheel a little bit this way. expose more of this. Excuse me if I sniffle. It's not because I have a cold or my nose is, well, your nose does run when it gets this hot and the sweat gets in your eyes. So I've jacked it up from under the control arm so that the weight is pushing downwards on the joint here. You see this goes underneath, so the weight is pushing down. The weight of the spindle and everything's pushing down. If I jacked up from here, I'd be pushing it back in. So let's hope. That taper broke. As you can see, it popped down. And if you if you ever need some jack helpers, like to get your jack a little higher or to protect chassis parts, just go pick up a 6-pack of hockey pucks at some just crappy ones. Doesn't matter. They work beautifully for that. They're really, really thick, hard rubber. I wouldn't trust my life to one by being under a car, but as a underneath a jack pad to keep it from scratching up the bottom of your car. They're good. So now I'm just going to cut this off. You know what? Let's get a chisel out. While this camera is still running, I'm going to get a cold chisel and see if I can't hammer that. It may or may not work. So, ready, tighty, lefty, loosey, underneath. It's the opposite way around. Is that spinning? It actually is. Oh, that was tough, huh? You know what? I may or may not save that socket and not take the 20 minutes it's going to take me to make this special tool. We'll see. So anyway, this is going to take a few minutes. I'm just going to unwind that bolt, tapping on it, and come back in a second and pound that ball joint out. Back in a sec. Okay, so there's the castle nut ring. I put a relief cut in it with the grinder, just because it was taking a while to pound it off, and I got better things to do than to waste 20 minutes pounding when I can put a 3-second cut in it and take it off. So now we're just going to pound this sucker out from underneath. Let's see if you can see that. Right there. I might be able to get. I should have jacked it up a little higher. And there it goes. So removing all of the suspension on this thing to take this out does not appear to be necessary. Let's take that top nut off. Can you see me? 21. Okay, I have to jack it up under here again. Telling myself to throw away this old floor jack because it was I was really using it because it was garbage. But it comes in handy for stuff like this. You just need an extra little bit of help. Oh, come on, I just need another millimeter. Get that off. Okay. Oh, mail lady's here. Must be something fun for me. Back in a minute. Okay, it's been about an hour, but I wrestled this thing out, and my problem was when you remove the upper ball joint nut at first, when you loosen it and then finger tighten it back on, and then break the taper so the nut falls, take that bolt off. Because once I did, it got pinched up between here and I could not get the bolt out. Once the bottom ball joint was out, which was no problem, loosened, it now left no space to pull anything out. So I ended up having to cut the ball joint shaft in order to get it out. You will have to remove the rear tie rod end. Sorry, it's really hot. I've said before, but it's frickin' baking, and I am so out of breath from doing this from the heat. But anyway, now the ball joint seat is fine, and you can push the light adapt camera. Okay, and then you can push the steering knuckle back. I took the rotor and everything off just so it was a little lighter, and the caliper. I thought I might have had to take the whole thing off in order to get that. That pinch bolt was stuck up in there, and there was no way of getting it out until I cut it. But I didn't have to take any of this off. I did take the caliper and rotor off, but I didn't have to do it this way. Just the rear, the outer tie rod end. So we're going to get this all prepared. I got the ball joints in the freezer, and it's going to be bottom ball joint in, put the nut on, and then wiggle the shaft for the upper ball joint nut into the taper here, put the nut on, and then we should be good. But I'm going to go grab that ball joint out of the freezer. Okay, sorry, I had to take a break for a couple hours. It was just too freaking hot out here, and now it's getting a little dark, but at least it's only like 85 degrees or 90 degrees out. So I got the once everything was out, put the bottom ball joint in, put the nut on, tighten it with the socket, the tool I made on my impact gun. This is like a 1 3/4 inch 3/4 inch drive socket. I'm just using an adapter to 1/2 inch for my impact gun, and got it on, got the top nut on, and I'm just tightening those up. I've got to check the torque on this before I finish it up, and I'll let you know in a few minutes. Okay, tightening torques on the lower ball joint top bolt here. That is to the control arm. That's about 65 foot-pounds. The special castle nut here on the bottom, that's 225 foot-pounds. And if you remove your axle hub, I did, because I was going to pull the whole thing off when I got that bolt stuck, but I got it out. This is 365 foot-pounds. So if you have no way of measuring 365 foot-pounds or applying 365 foot-pounds, you might not want to do it. Might not want to remove this, but it is doable. Like I said, it's doable without removing the entire knuckle. Trick is to freeze your ball joints before you put them in, and then they will slide into the ball joint carrier on the bottom. I'm just going to bolt all this crap back up that I had no reason to take off, but anyway, that's all my fault. I learned my lesson. Again, this top nut, before you take the bottom ball joint out, once you take this top nut out, and once you've broken the taper and it's loose in there, take the nut off, or else you'll be in a world of hurt. Or unless you just want to cut the ball joint in half like I ended up having to do. But anyway, 225 and 65. Thanks for watching. Okay, I thought I would show this one more quick time in fairness on the other side of the vehicle. I've got the tie rod end off right here. Unloose the first ball joint, the top ball joint nut, and drop and separate that. Oops, sorry. Drop and separate it away before you deal with the big nut on the bottom, or else this will not come out. Once you push this back up in, there's no room to pull it out. So there's just room to get that in and out. And so I'm going to take this out now. And anyway, thanks for watching. You've seen it all on the other side. And my mistakes hopefully teach someone else. Thanks for watching. Okay, just a recap, I guess. I am hot, roasted, and done. I think I'm sunstroked. Who cares? Oh, if you like Snapple spiked apple cider with Fuji apple. I don't know what percentage it is. Who cares? Spiked Fuji apple tea with vodka. Anyway, tends to keep you through this crap. Second side took 35 minutes. The only thing I have left to do is hook up the tie rod end and tighten the top ball joint nut. Everything else is done. And as you can see, no brakes, no caliper, no center drive shaft removal. Dead simple once you've figured it out. And the big thing is top nut off first. Drop that whole top ball joint away from the lower control arm, and then take the lower ball joint out. Don't worry about touching the lower ball joint until the top is out. I just assumed that I was going to need extra reinforcement with the top ball joint, holding it there in order to get the bottom out, which was not true at all. So what mechanics are giving 3 hours per side or 2 hours per side to do is BS. If they've done this before, they can do it in half an hour on a shop lift, with a hoist with the proper tools. Half an hour easy. So anyway, thanks for watching. Another addendum to the addendum. My homemade tool, well, she snapped just as I hit 250 foot-pounds of torque with my torque wrench. I took a cold chisel and gave it a few taps, the ring a few taps more anyway, just to be sure. But yeah, get the tool. I'm going to get the tool because, if I ever have to do the rears are basically the same. I'm pretty sure they use the same tool. And it's not fun cutting one of these with a grinder. It's just a pain in the butt. And it didn't stay, it didn't live. Again, about 35 minutes per side if you know what you're doing. Once you know what you're doing. So if you do the first side, it'll probably take you an hour. Second side should take you like 35, 45 minutes tops. Don't make the screw up I did. I know I've said this twice, maybe 3 times already. Get that top nut off the ball joint first. Get it out of there, or you're going to be in a world of hurt. Thanks for watching. Oh, another quick follow-up. I don't think I mentioned it. I don't think I videotaped it, but on the first side, the top ball joint nut, the 21 millimeter, I was doing from the front and using a wrench, a box wrench, to take it off. On the driver's side, when I did it, I realized you could access it with a socket if you turned it the other way. Turned it like once you took the tie rod end off, you could turn the spindle all the way and it would completely access that nut from the top with a regular socket and an extension. Which is another reason that it took only like 35 minutes to do the second side. It was a lot quicker than doing 8 turns on the other side. Anyway, first time doing the ML ball joint, so I didn't do the first side. Didn't know what I was doing on the first side exactly. I looked at my WIS manual and said, "There's no way I'm taking all that stuff off. I can do this without taking all that crap off." But anyway, yes, it is easier to access the top nut. Just rotate it in the opposite direction. So if you're on the driver's side, turn the hub all the way this way and the nut will be exposed, and on the passenger side turn it all the way the other way and the nut will be exposed on top, the top ball joint nut. Anyway, thanks for watching again.